That's right. Thank you, Doris and Lloyd. Wonderful. Thanks for joining us. Anyone
And
else?
and this is
Benjamin Ayers,
Carlos Cohen from the Bay Area,
or what else
member
do you
of
have
the
this afternoon?
Pinole
Anything else?
Progressive Alliance.
Wonderful. Thank you, Carlos. Great to have you with us. Anyone else like to say hi?
Andrea Bocanegra, Oakland chapter here, AD 18 delegate. Hi, everybody.
Excellent. Thank you, Andrea. Wonderful. Be careful driving. Anyone else?
I'm Robbie Camacho from Assembly District 2, Weaverville, California.
Excellent. Thank you.
Hey, you know me,
Wonderful.
Ted Terrell, AD 68, ADEM delegate this time.
Yes. Hey, Ted from Lake Forest, right?
Yep.
Wonderful. Thank you, Ted. Good to have you with us. Anyone
Good to
else?
be here.
Yes. Wonderful.
Hello there.
Thank you.
This is Melissa Swin Mallory from AD 20, delegate from Alameda County Central Committee.
Wonderful. Thank you, Melissa. And I think I saw Mel Figueroa join the group, one of our guest speakers today. Mel, are you with us?
Yes, I am. I mean, my camera is not working for some reason, but I'm gonna hopefully fix that soon. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, for being with us today. So, and good luck with the camera, because always helps to have a video when you're speaking. So, oh, there you are. Yay.
Hey, hello, everyone.
Thank you. Great to have you. And we're going to bring you back up in just a couple minutes here. But we're just saying hi to folks for these first few minutes. Mike Fowler, do we have Mimi Kennedy in the room yet?
I'm here. I'm here.
Yay, there she is, Mimi.
So good to see you. And I love the thing in back of you. I
That's
remember
right.
those days when we were all together, and I don't
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, LA. And I'm not a delegate, but I'm so glad to be with you. They asked me to MC, and I thought I can handle that. I could do that. It's great to see you all in your environments.
Well, Mimi, we love you. Thank you so much for agreeing to MC. We know you're so busy nowadays with your, your hit series and everything.
Bill, that ended after 8 years, and I'm happy to do this because I can be useful to someone. Yes.
No, you're useful to the entire country. You're just iconic and lift spirits everywhere. And, we all love you so much. Before I even knew that you were a star of the screen, I knew you were a star of the political scene. And so I've just always been in awe of you as long as I've known you. And so thank you once again for agreeing to MC our luncheon for PDA California. And I can say on behalf of the whole team that organized this event, thank you. So
Okay.
I'm going to turn it
Dr.
over
Bill,
to
Dr.
Mike
Bill,
Feller, right? And
Dr.
Mimi.
Bill, the meeting has ended. I think we should let everyone who's in the waiting room in, and we'll continue to chat for just a little bit.
Oh, you mean
and then
general session meeting? I thought you meant this meeting has ended.
No. It was that would have been too short. So what we will do very soon is we'll mute everyone and not allow them to chat. And the reason why we have to do that is because we may have over 200 people here, and it just becomes unwieldy. But for now and for a couple minutes, we'll leave the chat open and let people talk. And as soon as it gets out of hand, which should be any minute, I'd say, we'll turn that off and officially start the luncheon. I hope everybody's got some food handy, because it's not much of a luncheon without lunch. Anyway, Dr. Bill, take it back, please.
Well, thanks. Okay, sure. So let me, Mimi, you had your hand raised.
I do. I just have a housekeeping question before everybody gets here. Is someone timing, or am I, who knows the timing that we intended, am I to keep an eye on that? We used to be able to sit in front of people and maybe I should have something that says 1 minute or something like that. I don't, how did you envision that? I'm sorry, I didn't talk to you about this before.
For the speakers. So, yeah, Mike, what is the plan to keep track of time on the flow for the speakers?
1 minute.
That's the housekeeping thing. Thanks
Yeah.
everyone for hanging in there a minute as
I
we.
have a suggestion, and that's
Sure.
that I call them up and then I say this will be approximately to stay in, and then I think I should have a little post-it that says 1 minute.
Sure.
I mean,
I-
I'm not going to be able to shut it to shut anybody down. I always hate it in person, but it's going to be awkward on Zoom. So I want to have some sense. Maybe I don't know who's in charge of that.
I can do that meeting. I see lots of folks volunteering in the chat.
Okay.
So thank you everyone who's volunteering. Let me help. Let me be your partner for that meeting. So
Thanks, Bill.
sure. And so otherwise, folks, maybe in the spirit of kind of simulating our luncheon environment, and as people are getting here from the general session, I just wanted to, I'll just throw out a general comment about the convention so far. And I will say that, that it's been my observation, at least, just in my humble opinion, there's been this tremendous opportunity for real leaders to step up and non-leaders to step back. And in the Zoom format and, whatever I hop in, I guess they're using for the convention this time, lots of technical problems already in just the first sessions that they've had, and lots of frustrations there. We're seeing some of the meetings have a really nice concentration on policy and issues, and really bringing things forward that as Democrats we can be proud of, to be moving those agenda items forward, actually engage voters, the electorate, and but unfortunately, as usual, there's way too little of that. There's just not enough talking about issues and policy, and the non-leaders just want to talk about process and personality. So once again, that's what we're dealing with, and the eternal struggle that goes on, at least with the inside the party track, for progressive Democrats. So that's my observation. I don't know if folks want to throw out theirs at this point. If you want to raise an electronic hand or something like that at this point, if you have a comment or something you want to make about the proceedings so far. Hey, there's Mary Carter from Laguna Beach, California. Hey, Mary, how you doing? You can unmute and say hi to folks. You can't unmute. I don't know why. Let's try it now.
We've gone into the mode where where no one can chat except to the co-hosts, and people have to be invited to unmute.
Oh, okay.
So we need to find Mary.
I got it.
Excellent.
So,
There we go.
Of course, I was very excited that we were able to see Daraka, and I really appreciated his statement of names. So, a little prejudice. I'm sorry, guys, but I'm heartbroken that he didn't win. So I appreciated being able to hear him one more time. And now I'll zip it.
There you go. All right, cool. Anyone else with an observation, a comment, a greeting, land acknowledgement, anything else you want to share with the group at this point? I see Carolyn Fowler, the new chair of the Women's Caucus. I am so looking to you to bring, relevance and inspiration to us all from the Women's Caucus. So good to have you with us, Carolyn.
Greetings, Dr. Bell, and always a pleasure to be in the Progressive Caucus. I just wanted to say we just got to keep up doing what we're doing. The Women's Caucus is certainly going to be definitely behind you 200% on AB 1400. You see, I got my CalCare sign, and I have at least 770 members behind me and building and building towards that issue. I appreciate that we've got that message going in pretty much every caucus. I've enjoyed the intensity with which, if I don't know if people had a chance to attend the senior caucus, they got on some very tough issues. It's always pertinent. I was in the rural caucus this morning, which I've been a big proponent of broadband and talking with legislators around that issue, working with Joy, going to hearings and so forth. I just think there's a lot going on that we got to start taking credit for. The Children's Caucus is later today. I know they're focused on a lot of the bills that are impacting our students, both from not only from K through 12, but in the colleges as well. So it's a lot of work to be done. There's enough of us to get it done. We just all have to pay attention to which groups are really focused on. The Environmental Caucus was powerful yesterday with all the issues and all the legislation around that. I think we have a lot to be thankful for and hopeful for. I'll say hopeful. And hopefully this administration is going to give us the money to turn some of these issues around. But I did warn the Rural Caucus that our 5 big actors that have contributed $1.6 million lobbying against us to get the broadband we need. So we got to stay focused on that. But I think we're off to a great start on many of the issues, but your point is well taken. There's still a lot of those, I'll just say, commercial advertising.
The dog and pony show. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Carolyn, and great to see you and have you here with us. And like I say, you're bringing us a lot of hope, and no pressure, but lots of hope.
I can take it. I'm a fighter. I can take it.
I know you can.
Ask Mike Fowler and Mimi. They know me. I'm still on election protection too, Mimi, just so you know. I've already met with Dr. Weber about open source.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Carolyn, and great to see you. So there's my good friend, Sudi Frokia from Orange County. Hey, Sudi, how are you? Oh, sorry, we got to ask you to unmute. I forgot. Sorry, my fault, my bad.
No worries. Hi, everyone. I always look forward to these PDA meetings after the conventions, but this time we're sort of in the middle of the convention meeting up. Well, I used the technology really well. I had 2 laptops and a phone going, and so at the same time, I had 3 committee meetings going at the same time.
To acknowledge Alan.
Sorry. There you go.
So I thought that was interesting, but I still find it insane that we have these committee meetings that are so important, and there's so many good discussions all happening at the same time. The other thing I would like to mention that Carolyn, on Thursdays, I have my Women's Iranian Circle of Women Intercultural Network, and they always meet at 8, and it happened to be exactly at our progressive. So we did not meet our normal meeting. Instead, I had Hopin on and I shared it on the Zoom. So my entire Iranian Circle of Women Intercultural Network were able to watch the, Women's Caucus. So what I'm trying to say is that there are opportunities that are unique this time, which is, I like to acknowledge them. but at the same time, it's not the same. You know, we're not networking, we're not meeting new people. So there are some negatives in there, and I'm sure that everyone has done a really good job. But one feedback I got was that there was a lot of rah, we're so great, and not so much talking about solutions, what are we moving forward. And I'm hoping that, you know, we'll see that at the end, you know, tomorrow in the meetings, and where we see what resolutions actually passes and what, you know, what legislations move forward. So we have something tangible from this convention.
Totally with you. Totally with you there, Sudie. And how do we get California strong? Well, it's not me, us, right? So
Exactly.
right. Thank you. So we do have to move the agenda. Sorry, Ilka, but I've got to take it to Alan Minsky now so we can move the meeting forward. We can come back to your comments, other comments and questions, hopefully later in the luncheon. But we do have to go to Alan Minsky now, who is quite literally on the road up there at Dodger Stadium on his way to a vaccination, his second vaccination. And thank you, Alan, for sharing your time with us today. PDA National Executive Director Alan Minsky, you should be able to unmute and speak now.
Hey, there, great, I can speak. Yes, yes, I can. And I suppose I'll just jump in now and maybe launch the meeting and hand off to you and Mimi, and as opposed to, we had talked about me doing a time certain at 12:45, but I'm gonna now show everybody where I am right now, which, tell me, Dr. Bill, if you can see well where I am and name it. Can you tell, Dr. Bill?
I'm thinking it's the parking lot at Dodger Stadium. I don't know.
Okay, I hope, yeah, hopefully that's visible. Again, I can't really tell what the screen is showing, but as I really reach across my car and put this out the window, you should see Dodger Stadium in the background with all the cars lined up. So I am literally at what I think is as seminal event as imaginable for 2021, for the state of the world, for the political and social and public health crisis we've all experienced. And this is, of course, a day I have longed for. I long for this for everybody. And as you know, PDA, first of all, I want to invite everybody to attend our weekly Medicare for All COVID-19 crisis town halls that take place 1 p.m. Pacific. We have a great guest this week. Dr. Bill can fill in on the details in a moment. I also would be remiss, by the way, if I didn't ask people to join us for a town hall on May 12th with Nina Turner. But alas, let me just say this right now, which is that where I am right now is an example of the importance and the centrality of public policy and politics in our lives. I think everybody on the call knows that. But this is an example of the kind of role that the Democratic Party needs to play in lifting up public expenditures and public policy to improve people's lives. All of the arguments of neoliberalism and Reaganism are severely weakened in light of what I am participating in right now. The amount of public expenditure that has gone into this, the vaccines, the universal free at the point of service vaccines. I haven't seen it yet, but there's a Lancet study I've heard about, and I haven't read it, and I don't want to be passing along misinformation. But my understanding is some kind of study was done of a few congressional districts, recognizing the number of fatalities in American congressional districts and estimating that 40% of them would not have occurred had we had single payer universal health care. 40% of the death toll across the country right now would be 240,000 lives that have been lost unnecessarily because we have a greed-driven, absolutely unnecessary role played by private health insurance companies in interfering with the delivery of public health. Now, California and the California Democratic Party has an opportunity right now to fight a battle to lead the way in transforming that. We are blessed to have R.L. Miller and Melissa Figueroa with us today on this call, an incredible list of guests, other people who are champions on Medicare for All, including the state senators joining us. And of course, Kevin DeLeon was a champion of the bill when he was leading the California State Senate. But that, and on so many ways across the environment with RL and Melissa and all the work we all do, bringing all of these things together, wealth inequality, homelessness, poverty, these are all things that PDA and progressives in California have to push the party towards representing. 1960, 1970 to 1980, maybe defying the expectations of many people in the country, given the power of the student movements and social movements in California in those years. A right-wing politics spread from California across the country. Now we have an opportunity to spread progressive politics that address all of the systematic inequities and oppressions of American society from California across the country and from there across the world. And so thank you very much to Shirley Gollop and Mike Fowler for bringing together an incredible group of guests. Thank you, Dr. Bill, and thank you, Mimi Kennedy, and back to you. And I'll leave you again with the Dodgers who started losing games just a few days ago, which is uncommon for them. But again, this is about as just a scene for 2021 to take away as any that's really imaginable. So I'll leave you with that image again and take it away, Mimi and Dr. Bill.
Thank you so much, Alan, and you know, in all the time and effort that you give, and also in grounding this meeting in the reality that, like you said, it's a science, and if Joe Biden wants to follow the science, he can follow the science of public health and economic experts that say that 40% of the COVID deaths would have been saved with a Medicare for all system. So you're absolutely right, and that should be a reality check. We'll get more into the healthcare discussion later, but I'd like to turn it over to Mimi Kennedy and also acknowledge Shirley Gollop as well, as you mentioned, who was the key figure in organizing. Shirley is the vice president of our PDA-CA PAC for PDA California. So thank you, Shirley Gollop, for your terrific organizing from PDA San Francisco and Oakland. And otherwise, I'll turn it over to our wonderful MC for this event, Mimi Kennedy. And thank you once again, Mimi Kennedy, for agreeing to do this for us. And you need to be invited to unmute too.
I'm invited to unmute. Thank you, Dr. Bill. Okay, it's so good to see a lot of people I know. Oh my God, that I have worked with, Carolyn and Jody and all of PDA. But as usual, and also I wanted to mention that the rah-rah nature of conventions is something I remember well from organizing with PDA. I remember going to a national convention and visiting the regional caucuses. And I remember going into the Eastern region, Northeast, and they were bragging about how much money they'd raised. Well, I got 2 million. Well, we have a pretty good candidate. I got 4 million. And they were all congratulating themselves. And I thought, this is why we need PDA, because that would not be what a convention of our meetings would look like. Money's important, I know, from fundraising, but I was very disheartened to see that at a national convention for my first time out, I think 2007. Well, we're going to have 4 segments, and I'm going to give a rough idea of how long the speakers have, but as usual, I had to Google and look at bios of people that I haven't known up until now. And because I am emceeing, but I'm not a delegate and I haven't been close, you will know more probably about some of these people than I, but I am so thrilled to have learned about them. The first person is Chesa here, by the way, Chesa Boudin. Okay, good. So here's what I learned. Of course, he spoke at PDA's 2019 luncheon. So a lot of you have heard him and a lot of you live in San Francisco, where he was elected district attorney. He stepped into the race when it was an open seat very bravely, because, which also touched me, his personal experience as an infant with both parents being incarcerated convinced him that there had to be a better way. He's a decarceral prosecutor. I had to look that up. It means working to reduce people's contact with the criminal justice system by addressing the roots of crime and using data-driven reform to improve the system. So he's ended cash bail in the San Francisco DA office. He stopped sentence enhancements that had started to increase jail time way beyond even maximums. He started a diversion program for caregivers so they could choose treatment and education instead of getting into the criminal justice system. He ended prosecutions based on what were obviously pretextual stops for traffic violations that were racist. He started an economic crimes against workers unit to end worker exploitation, and he has reduced the jail population of San Francisco while reducing the crime rate. So after reading your bio, Jess, I want to thank you for seizing the opportunity to run for an open seat. And I know that you are strong enough to go against the pushback that's coming at you because you are really making a difference. Thank you, Jess.
Thank you. Very humbling to not be able to unmute myself and to be dependent on our host for all things. And thank you, Mimi, for that really generous introduction. I have to say, after you went through those highlights, I feel like I don't have anything I need to add. I want to just rest on the comments you made. But I have a vivid memory of the lunch in 2019 with all of you. And of course, so good to see many of my friends here. I see Mary Leatherman. I see a number of my other friends from San Francisco here and from across the state. And this is such a critical moment, a critical opportunity for us to come together, even virtually, even from the distance that COVID and Zoom creates, to reaffirm our values, our shared values, and our commitment to a more progressive state and a more progressive country. You know, there are some of the policies that you mentioned, Mimi, that I want to just touch on because they really go to the heart of the reforms that are deeply needed in our criminal justice system across the state and to the work that I'm trying every day to do as district attorney, even in the face of 2 different recall attempts, a COVID pandemic that has shut us out of our own office since barely 2 months into my term. But you mentioned money bail, and I want to just take a minute to reflect on what that does to our legal system and to our communities, and to why it was one of the very first policies I implemented to change things when I took office. For folks who aren't familiar, money bail is a system in which wealthy people can buy their way out of jail, while poor people languish behind bars. And that's true regardless of how dangerous the wealthy person may be, how strong the evidence against them is, or how trivial the charges against the poor person. And yet, for decades, all across this country, we've had a for-profit money bail industry that charges non-refundable fees to get people out of jail. It undermines public safety by putting dangerous people back on the streets, and it undermines the promise of equal protection under law by forcing people to be incarcerated simply because of their poverty. Now, we know that we don't believe in this country, we don't believe in incarcerating people just because they're poor. And we also know that we have a presumption of innocence, that when someone's arrested and even charged with a crime, the Constitution and our system still presumes their innocence. And yet all across the country, we have people who are in jail simply because they're poor, even though they haven't been convicted of any crime. And so when I took office, I knew one of my priorities was to replace this wealth-based system with a risk-based system, a system in which we only ask, in my office, my prosecutors are only allowed to ask the court to hold someone in custody if there are no non-monetary conditions that can protect the public. Right? And if there aren't any, then it doesn't matter how rich they are. We don't want them on the streets. If they're so dangerous, I don't care if they're Bill Gates or they've got $1 billion. If they're so dangerous, it shouldn't matter. They should stay in jail pending trial. Now, this is one example of a policy. You mentioned others, Mimi, our primary caregiver diversion, one that's very close to my own lived experience, growing up visiting my parents behind bars, seeing generation after generation of children impacted by parental incarceration, and far too many fall into that intergenerational cycle of incarceration, having their own families and communities torn apart by mass incarceration. And that led, of course, to more people being victims of crime and more people committing crimes and more people in our jails and prisons. And I wanted to break that cycle. So now in San Francisco, We recognize that we're all safer if we prioritize keeping parents at home with their kids, giving them the skills to be effective parents. And policies like those have contributed to a decline in our jail population of over 40%, something that was absolutely critical in this past year to prevent a COVID-19 outbreak in the jails. We saw that happen all across the city, all across the country, in cities like Chicago and New York and in San Quentin, just across the Bay Bridge. And then on the juvenile side, one of the core commitments that I made to all of you when I stood in front of you at lunch at that Chinese restaurant a couple of years ago was that we would treat kids like kids, that we would stop prosecuting children as adults, and that we would work together with other city leaders, the mayor and the board of supervisors and everybody in the city to close our juvenile hall because kids don't belong in cages. And I'm proud that in less than a year, we managed to reduce our juvenile detention population, right? The number of children that are in cages, literally in a jail, we reduced that number by 75%. Right? We are well on our way to closing down our juvenile hall entirely, to being able to treat kids like the still developing human beings that they are, with a full potential for change and for growth and for realizing all of the good things that we want for them and that we need them to focus on in order to succeed. We know that jails and detention centers do not bring out the best in any of us, especially our youth and our young people. So that's another example of something we've done in San Francisco, even as crime rates have fallen. And I want to touch on this for a minute. We have never been safer in San Francisco than we are today. And despite that, the fear-mongering and the attacks and the dishonesty from the right wing and even from the moderate wing of the Democratic Party is staggering. They are holding me and other progressive prosecutors to a standard that no one has ever held the tough on crime, lock them up and throw away the key folks to. And it is it's an important reminder for all of us as we think about change, right? When we step forward, when folks like me or George Gascon now in Los Angeles, when we step forward and advocate for change, the police unions and the people dedicated to defending the failed status quo, the status quo that relies on mass incarceration as a tool for social control of Black and brown bodies, that relies on big prisons to line the pockets of the prison guard unions and of the police unions, the status quo that relies on fear to divide us rather than love to bring us together, that starves our local communities of the resources that we all know, progressives know we need to build safe communities, right? Investments in education and healthcare and job training and housing, things that will actually build strong, resilient, safe communities. We haven't had those resources because they've been siphoned off to militarize police and to build jail and prison after prison after prison. Well, we're making change. We're showing that we can do it in ways that keep our community safe. Robberies are down 20% since I took office. Overall crime down by double digits, assaults down by 15%. And what we see is the conservatives and the moderates coming out of the woodwork to act as though every single crime that occurs is our fault, as though there was ever a period where there was no crime, as though we should have a one strike and you're out policy. That is literally the dangerous rhetoric that we see coming out of some of the local press, right? The idea that anytime the police make an arrest, it should automatically lead to criminal charges. And anytime you have criminal charges, it should lead to preemptive detention. That is not true. That is not consistent with our values. It is not consistent with our system of laws and our Constitution. And it is not how we build safety. It is exactly what got us into this mess. It's what led to mass incarceration. It's what led to having 1 in 3 Black boys in this country expect to be incarcerated at some point in their life. It's what led to the murder of George Floyd and Daunte Wright. And I am so proud of the work that we're doing in San Francisco to hold police accountable, to end money bail, to end our reliance on jails and prisons as a primary response to mental illness and addiction and poverty. And we have a long way to go. I'm up against 2 separate recalls. And I know my time is short, but I'm asking you to join me and join us in this movement to show the world that we can build safety without relying on cages as a primary response to poverty and to healthcare shortages. We can do it together, but we know there's going to be attacks. There are attacks. I literally am facing 2 separate recalls right now. So please stand with me, stand with other progressives across the state as we build a safer future that reflects all of our values. Thank you so much.
I knew that was going to be good, Chesa, but that was really good. It's wonderful to have you here. Thank you. I love this vision, and I know Tim Carpenter always said, when you get that pushback, that's when you know you've been effective and are being effective. Okay. I just got a little note that we're a little behind schedule, and I think it's probably a hard ending that we have for reasons of the convention. So just so our speakers know that, I'm sure you were probably given an initial thing, and you are free to deal with that as you can. I'm holding up pathetic little Post-its here in my square. So if you happen to see me doing that, just know I hate shutting anyone down, but I guess we're up against a hard end. So we want to make sure we get all our speakers in. Next, I'm going to bring Pamela Price, who was just endorsed early and unanimously by the PDA-CA Oakland chapter steering committee for Alameda District Attorney. Yay. She, again, I Google, I learn as I do this. You got, Pamela, a list of awards and commendations for your civil rights attorney work, as long as my arm, and that is in small print on the internet, long as my arm. In 1979, you were still at UC Berkeley Law and founded the Bay Area Defense Committee for Battered Women. And you can tell by the title that this is a historic effort on the part of Pamela Price. She's won countless suits against harassment, wrongful termination, retaliation, sexual assault, discrimination of any kind, and she's one of the few Black women to ever have argued before the Supreme Court, and she won. So please welcome Alameda District Attorney candidate Pamela Price.
And let me apologize, because despite all my wonderful awards, I can't figure out how to make my picture show on this Zoom. I'm using someone's machine. And okay, let me see, you help me host. There! Yay! Thank you, host. I'm using a different machine today. So thank you, Mike. Appreciate that. And thank you, Mimi, for that introduction. And thank you all for having me. I was honored to speak at your luncheon back in, I think, 2018. And yes, I'm running for Alameda County District Attorney, and I appreciate, Mimi, your letting us know about the time. So I'm going to keep it really brief. I mean, I'm running for DA because I am a drum major for justice, and because we do have a movement of progressive prosecutors and progressive people in this time of racial reckoning. And it's so important that we are all engaged in the fight for criminal justice reform. There is no better place to start when we're talking about ending racial discrimination and addressing the racial inequities than the criminal justice system, which, as we all know, is basically a throwback to slavery and the post-slavery times, and how mass incarceration, as Michelle Alexander so eloquently taught us, is the new Jim Crow. And so my platform, which is a 10-point platform at PamelaPrice4DA.com, includes things that we know will address mass incarceration. And I want to highlight just 3 major points. One is the issue of the day, which is police accountability. And we understand, as we are looking at the post-George Floyd verdict, how important it is that we seize this moment to make people aware of how important it is that we have police accountability. It is a watershed moment where you have police departments actually speaking out against the misconduct of a member of their department. And so it's an opportunity for us to move the ball forward, because the 3 things that are critical when you're talking about police accountability is not just prosecution, but also understanding and getting people to understand that police unions have tremendous influence over prosecutors and other elected officials, and that we have to stop that from happening, that we cannot have a double standard. Our slogan is no more double standard, which means as a prosecutor, I commit, as a lawyer, I commit to provide and ensure fair and equal justice for everyone in my community. And then we have to also address the unfair and unjust convictions that have been perpetuated by police misconduct. And so every progressive prosecutor has to have a conviction integrity unit. And that's one of the key things that we will bring, because we have to look back. It's not just enough to say, oh, we're going to move forward now. There are such huge injustices, as Chase has just alluded to. The intergenerational nature of incarceration in this country is just huge. And 1 in 3 Americans have been adversely impacted by our carceral state. And so we've got to address that. A key part of our platform is also reentry. In California, SB 369 was passed in the legislature to establish a reentry commission. It was vetoed by the governor, but we desperately need that, because right now across the state, what we have is just a patchwork of counties, some addressing reentry. It's a patchwork in Alameda County of nonprofits, and it's just completely inadequate, which is why California has such a huge recidivism rate, is that we do not create pathways for people to come home and become productive members of the society. And so we've got to address that in a really aggressive way. My third issue is gun violence, which we see across the country, and certainly in my county, Alameda County, as well as in other counties, we see the spike in gun violence. But the fact of the matter is we have too many guns in America, and prosecutors need to be at the forefront of the movement to address gun violence, not just the kind that ends up killing people, but the kind that injures people, recognizing that often when we talk about victims of gun violence, we forget how many people are actually shot and survived. We forget, we never talk about how many people commit suicide using guns. That's the #1 cause of death by gun, is suicide. It's not police, it's not us killing each other, it's suicide. And so we've got to address that in some very substantive ways. As you all know, there is a progressive prosecutor movement, and I'm honored to be part of that, to be inspired by folks like Larry Krasner and Chesa and George Gascon, and to have your support. And yes, I'm honored to be endorsed by my chapter of PDA Oakland, and I hope I'll be endorsed by PDA California and PDA nationally, and that we will take this seat. This is a powerful seat. Alameda County is viewed as one of the most progressive counties in the country. And yet we saw the Democratic Party in 2018 support one of the most racist regimes of criminal justice in this country, not just the state. Alameda County is #9 in the country in terms of the number of people we have sent to death row. So this is a critical fight that we're in, and we know it's a fight, just like Chase is dealing with the fight in San Francisco. We know that there will be a backlash. In 2018, the police union spent $1.5 million to defeat us, and we got 42% of the vote up against $1.5 million. Every police agency in the state came to Alameda County. And so my call to action is that every progressive on this call and every progressive organization needs to plan to come to Alameda County for the June 22 election. So thank you for letting me speak. Thank you.
Yeah, that was fantastic, Pamela. Thank you so much. Oh, man. Okay. Can you imagine what California is going to look like? I mean, I can. This is how it has to be. And I'm so grateful that you've stepped up and that you're getting right into the criminal justice system and our courts, which is how the law works. All right. We have someone that I am really admiring of. We're moving to the issue of housing and homelessness in LA. And we have a man to whom this is a priority of the heart. LA Council Member Kevin DeLeon represents 14th District of LA. I can hear a lot of stuff, and I don't know if everybody else can, but I hope you can hear me. Oh, hi, Kevin, that's you. So, okay. He represents the 14th District of LA, and it includes Boyle Heights, much of East LA, downtown. In the California Senate, he was the first Latino to hold that office, President pro tem, in 130 years. And I've long admired you, Kevin, your approach to elective politics, because like the two people that we've just heard, you know that to step up, run the campaign, fearlessly pursue a position you know will have the impact you want on the priorities that are important to you. That's why you go out and campaign. And I am so grateful. And you are here to talk about the one issue, the priority you're fiercest about right now. And we all recognize on our streets as a spiritual, moral, physical crisis, housing and homelessness in LA. Welcome, Kevin.
Well, Mimi, from first and foremost, from the bottom of my heart, I want to thank you for that incredible presentation of my person. I thank you so much for introducing me and to Dorothy, the progressive conscious of Topanga Canyon. You know, I thank you so very much for extending the invitation to all the wonderful friends I have at PDA. Progressive Democrats of America. You've always been a bedrock of support for me since I ran, when I was leader of your California State Senate, when I ran for the US Senate, and when no one thought that we had a chance. We came that close to winning that US Senate seat through an election, not an appointment. And it was because of all of you, you know, from Southern California to Northern California and points in between, that we had such a strong showing. So for that, I always carry each and every member from the PDA in the bottom of my heart. Progressives, you know, of America, it's great to spend a few moments with each and every one of you. And to Chase, although I don't know him, I wish him the very best as he moves forward with progressive, you know, policies in the city and county of San Francisco. And to Pamela, I had the wonderful opportunity to meet Pamela during my U.S. Senate race, you know, somewhere in Alameda County. I don't know if it was in Alameda, it was probably in the city of Oakland itself. And I wish her the very, very best of luck. Progressive voices rising among the prosecutorial ranks up and down the city of California is a good thing for all of us, regardless of who you are, regardless of where you come from. Now, let me say a couple things. Now, as you all know, in terms of backgrounds, you know, I can have the Golden Gate Bridge, you know, I can have the Bay Bridge, I can have the Hollywood sign behind me, I can have the downtown skyline of Los Angeles, I can have Walt Disney Concert Hall or the Hollywood Bowl. And what you have behind me in my screensaver is Skid Row. That is Skid Row in my city council district in downtown Los Angeles. And I want to put this in context for each and every one of you, because on any given night, we have over 41,000 unsheltered and sheltered men, women, and increasingly women with children living on our streets, our parks, our alleyways, sidewalks, in their cars, as well as RVs. And that's just the city of Los Angeles. That's just the city of LA. If LA is the epicenter of homelessness nationwide, and the district that I have the absolute honor of representing is ground zero for the United States of America. And I want to put this in context once again, because just in my city council district, which is number 14, just in my city council district, I have more unhoused individuals, men, women with children, than the entire unhoused population of the cities of Chicago and Houston. Now, that's the third and fourth largest cities in America. easily, easily Baltimore, Miami, Washington, D.C., Cleveland, Cincinnati, Ohio, New York, New Jersey, Detroit, Michigan, San Jose, Oakland, San Diego. Now, the city and county of San Francisco in my district, we may be sort of kind of neck and neck right now in terms of unhoused individuals. I have over 8,000 just in my district alone. But I put Skid Row because I'm proud of the men and women who live in Skid Row too. They're human beings who deserve a modicum of dignity and respect. And that's why I believe truly that this is the moral crisis of our time. That in clearly the wealthiest state in the nation, California, the 5th largest GDP on planet Earth. There's only 4 economies larger than California: the United States of America as a whole, China, Japan, and Germany. Then it's California. And that means our economy, our GDP, is larger than that of the United Kingdom, of France, of Italy, of Vladimir Putin's Russia, of Brazil, of India. Yet we have over 150,000 people who live on our streets every single day in our state. And that's not including those who are barely holding on to a shoestring right now because of the global pandemic, COVID-19. And when that eviction moratorium expires come June, we're going to have a large, gigantic tsunami of individuals who will be the newly unhoused, that new inflow. And that's not counting those who actually live on the streets today. That's why I believe this is the moral crisis of our time. And I truly believe the multi-generations that are in this moment will be judged. We'll be judged on how we rise up to the occasion and provide a roof over everyone's head. We need to put a roof over their head, because when we use the words homeless or unhoused, it's because they have no home, they have no house, they have no roof over their head. Whether they ended up on the streets for economic reasons and bad luck, whether they ended up on the streets because of some type of trauma and severe mental illnesses, whether that trauma is induced, could have been an attack of some sort, a sexual assault, it could be innate and within our family, whether it's schizophrenia, whether it's bipolarness, a psychotic episode, whether they ended up on the street because of an addiction of some sort. And I know a lot of folks remember back in the day, perhaps when the worst substance was perhaps night train or port or Ripple in a paper bag. Well, to now it's most pernicious because it is crystal meth and it's heroin, irrespective of how they landed on the streets. It is our moral, it's our legal, and it's our political obligation to move heaven and earth, to move mountains, to make sure that we put a roof over their head. And to Mimi's point, that's why I've introduced a plan called A Way Home. A Way Home, which is to produce 25,000 housing units by the year 2025. And the reason why I say this is very similar to when I drafted as the architect of Senate Bill 100, 100% clean renewable energy for the state of California. Now, I said to myself, if we don't put a number, a target, we're never going to get there. We're going to sort of meander, if you will, towards clean energy, wind, renewable energy, and other zero carbon technologies that will be created in the future through our innovation and through capital investment. But you have to have a hard target, because if you don't have a hard target, then we never get there. It's human psychology. And that's why we need to have 25,000 housing units by the year 2025. Now, housing units, that could be a 1-bedroom, that could be a studio, it can be 2 bedrooms. It can be prefabricated modular housing. It can be adaptive reuse. We go purchase a building. It can be purchasing hotels and motels that are no longer being utilized because of the global pandemic, because there's no tourism. Let's just go outright buy a building and convert it into permanent housing. It can be master leasing. Now, it doesn't make a difference if you live in Fruitvale, if you live in Piedmont, if you live in Alameda, if you live in San Francisco and Marin or in Los Angeles, anywhere in LA County, we have an abundance of vacancies. So obviously, because of our FICO score, our lack of ability to put a down payment, not holding a job, no one's going to rent to me if I'm unhoused. But we ourselves as government whether it's city, county, or state, we can master lease and provide a guaranteed stream of revenue to pay rent, because we have so many vacancies that you don't have to invest capital in. So I think we have to throw everything in the kitchen sink, because we know that our unsheltered family members, neighbors, or loved ones, they don't like congregate shelters. They don't like to be warehoused. They'd rather live on the streets than be warehoused under one roof with cots. This is not FEMA, but I'll tell you one thing right now, God forbid, if we had an earthquake in the Bay Area, if we had an earthquake in Los Angeles, and we had 40, 50, 60,000 people living on the streets, we know very well that FEMA and every government at every single level will move heaven and earth. And that's why we have to treat this as a disaster that it is. And that's why we have to move heaven and earth. And I've also submitted a proposal to my colleagues in the California State Legislature to invest over $20 billion, $20 billion, because of our gargantuan surplus. Even under a COVID-19 economy, we have a huge surplus. And we should be investing at minimum $20 billion just for our unhoused community members. It is our moral obligation to do so. And whether you live in San Francisco and you know the Tenderloin district very well, as I do, next to Civic Center, whether you live in Oakland or you live in San Jose and it's the Guadalupe River, there's so many folks living on that river in their tents, whether it's in Fresno, it's all over our state. And it leaves an indelible mark of shame for all of us to have so many folks living on the streets today. And that's why we need to prevent that tsunami in terms of the rent evictions and make sure we can pay back that rent that's due. Because how do you pay rent if you have no job, if you've been infected by the coronavirus, especially a person of color living in communities throughout the state of California where we know where the hotspots were, folks who disproportionately were impacted by both the infection as well as mortality rates, and our unhoused community members who are actually experiencing homelessness right now as we speak. So my plan is called A Way Home. You can Google it, A Way Home 25 by 25. I want it to be the model for the rest of the state and for the rest of the nation. And you all know that I've taken on some really hard battles, making California 100% clean, renewable energy, not aspirational, but statutorily, etched in stone legally, making California the first and largest state in America to be a sanctuary state, to declare ourselves a sanctuary state, where then Attorney General at the Department of Justice, Jeff Sessions, took us on, sued us, and we won in a federal court. We won at the appellate court, and we won at the US Supreme Court, when the US Supreme Court justices, with a lot of Trump appointees, by the way, made the decision not to hear the case from the Department of Justice. You know that I had the courage of my convictions to move, single payer, not just from Rules Committee and the Health Committee, but get it off the Senate floor so we can have a true debate on the issue of single payer. So we can have healthcare for all, not just healthcare for some. So I'm used to the big battles. I'm used to rolling up my sleeves and mixing it up, because it's the courage of our convictions and the values that we adhere to that make our city, our county, our state, our nation a better place to live. And it doesn't make a difference if you're a progressive, if you're a moderate, if you're a liberal Republican or a right-wing ideologue, whether you live in if you believe in single payer or not, whether you believe in facts or science when it comes to the issues of climate change, whether it's the issue with regards to immigration and immigration reform for all, not just for some, not just for dreamers, because you can't legalize dreamers and their mom and dad now are still undocumented. How is that going to help us? That means we have to move fully with conviction of our progressive values. And that's why, again, let me reemphasize that we will be judged, the multiple generations, whether you're from the baby boomer generation, Generation X, millennials, and Z, together during this pandemic, global crisis that we're facing, that we're enduring today. It will be our generation, see if we really stepped up to deal with the issue of homelessness. To each and every one of you, to the incredible progressives that you are, the sharp tip of the spear that keeps our elected officials accountable. I thank all of you from the bottom of my heart. Mimi and Dorothy, and I see so many friends from Southern California, from the Bay Area. I love each and every one of you. You have been a bedrock of support. You will always continue to be my bedrock of support. I bid you all a fantastic and safe weekend at the convention. We're doing it virtually, but we're going to get something done for our unhoused community members. And I don't want to piecemeal this. I don't want this to be disjointed. I want a global, comprehensive solution once and for all to put a roof over their head, because they deserve a modicum of dignity and respect, regardless of who you are, regardless of where you come from, regardless of the color of your skin, regardless of who you love, which God you pray to, and yes, regardless of your legal status. Progressive Democrats America, thank you so very much.
Woohoo! Mimi,
Yeah.
sorry to interrupt, and thank you so much, Councilmember Kevin DeLeon. I blew it. Mea culpa. I blew it. I was supposed to give the floor to PDA-CA President Mike Fowler for some kind of introductory remarks before we went. So maybe we could fit that in real quickly before we go to the next segment. And again, sorry, but thank you so much, Kevin DeLeon. You are a champion and inspiration to all of us too. So great to see you. Thank you for all the work that you're doing. Mike Fowler, you had some words for us.
Okay, yes. In fact, why don't we just consider this a little break in the middle of our speakers? And what I want to let you know is the history a little bit of the luncheon, and some things that PDA-CA is up to. The luncheon itself is a tradition that may be 17 years old. Last year it didn't happen because there wasn't a CDP convention. But we're doing it this year virtually, as you obviously know. So please forgive us if it doesn't go as smoothly as we would like, because it's something we've never tried to do, is have a lunch by Zoom. In any case, just so that you understand, PDA, Progressive Democrats of America, is is a federal PAC, and PDA-CA, PDA California, is a state PAC, so that the PDA family can address both California issues and nationwide issues, and other states have similar things going on there. Besides the lunch, we usually have a convention wrap-up after each convention, and I know that a lot of you I see on this list have attended the convention wrap-up. We figured that was a bit much to try to do by Zoom. The convention wrap-up was always between the gavel drop of the convention and everyone's airline tickets to get out of town. So hopefully we'll be doing that next year. We'll return to that tradition. But the idea of having virtual meetings really is something of a lemon that PDA-CA and PDA have been turning into lemonade by having statewide meetings. And the statewide meetings, and in fact some nationwide meetings, we hold them every couple months during COVID, and we're probably going to hold them every couple months when COVID is over. We've also, last year, we planned a mini convention of PDA California people that you would have been invited to. We started the planning in early March of last year, and you'll never guess what happened to make it so we couldn't do it. But we hopefully will be doing that in 2022. So keep that in mind. What we like to do is have that mini convention in California counties or rural counties that aren't typical population centers, to get people involved from all around the state. Alan Minsky mentioned, or will mention if he hasn't yet, that PDA does letter drops to Congress, and they're expanding that into a liaison team that you will hear about. And the liaison team will be people, PDA people or PDA-CA people, from all around the country, getting in with their Congress people. And along with doing letter drops, we'll actually go in and have talks with them. That's just getting off the ground with PDA. Once we see that's successful, PDA-CA is planning on doing that with our assembly people and state senators. And the other thing we're doing is, I will wrap it up, Dr. Bill, I swear. We're building alliances with other California progressive groups. Our Revolution and Common Cause come to mind. We would like your help in connecting us with them if you're members of their organizations. So please join PDA. And if you do, you'll also be joining PDA-CA, assuming that you live in California. And to do that, go to pdamerica.org, click on join. It doesn't cost anything, and then you'll become a member of both PDA and PDA-CA and be informed. So that's what I wanted to say. Break time is over. I'm going to pass it back, and let's hear from the rest of our great speakers. Thanks, everybody, for attending.
Mike, thank you for your tremendous work. I'm so glad ever since you joined PDA. And I remember, is it 17 years ago, that luncheon? Horrors. I've had a good time, though, all 17 years of it. So let's keep going. We're going to move to a related crisis to housing and homelessness, but it's the giant umbrella, the global climate emergency and environmental justice. And as specifically it impacts California, we have 3 brilliant speakers, and I've given them 7 minutes because it was initially a 20-minute carved into 3 segments, and we're 12 minutes behind on whatever this hard stop is. So I just want to let our speakers know that and deal with accordingly your remarks. I'll give you the 2 minute and 1 minute. I want to bring in, first of all, Sabrina Jacobs. And thank you, Sabrina, first of all, for your visionary focus as a media producer. I learned about you today, too, and host on the issues of climate and environmental justice, because she produces, for those of you who don't know, Rude Awakening, which can be heard on KPFA at 8 a.m. on Fridays, live, listen to live stream on the web at that time, KPFA, or you can access it as a podcast. And I also noted, by the way, Sabrina, that you do a show from 12 a.m. to 2 a.m. Tuesday, which some of us might want to access live, called A Box of Toys, where you listen to music that is rarely heard, just as some of your brilliant guests on climate change are rarely heard to the degree that they are heard on your podcast. I hope that is something that will change very soon. But I'm going to listen to your unheard music thing too, because I have a collection from 78s to 45s with my brother. I think I heard it. Thank you, Sabrina. Please, I won't take any of your time.
No worries. Hi, Mimi. It's nice to meet you all. Thank you so much, Miss Mimi Kennedy. And
You have frozen for me and perhaps for some of the rest of us, Sabrina. Yes, I'm seeing nods. You have frozen. Let's wait it out a minute. And if you don't come back in about 10 seconds, I can see you're in a car.
yeah, this is an
There you
amazing opportunity for facilitating. It's a free-for-all show the first 6-7 years. Oh, the management.
Sabrina, there's
Can you hear me now?
problems. Yeah, I can hear you now. Try again.
Okay, wonderful. Okay. Are we good now? Yep. Okay, great. So A Rude Awakening was just a free-for-all political affairs show. And then a year ago, management said, hey, we need
Sabrina, this is tragic, but we are not getting that. We wish you were in your KPFA studio where we know that the tech would be reliable, but unfortunately it's not. You know what I'm going to do, if with your permission, everybody, Sabrina, just so you know.
Emergency show. I said, hey, you're right. And plethora of guests.
Yeah, Sabrina, we are going to have.
Rude.
Yeah.
I appreciate the opportunity.
Oh, shoot. Okay. So she's aware of what happened. I hope you can come back in, Sabrina. Okay.
Yeah, of course. Thank
you.
you. Okay.
Do you want to just speak without it? Because we've had
Sure.
that. All right, great.
Okay.
I'm gonna start your 6.5 minutes right now.
Oh, you know what, Mimi? All I need is about a minute and a half. So I
All
think you
right,
guys
good.
will be able to catch up on that clock. Okay, wonderful. Yeah, I
Good.
just want to direct folks' attention to A Rude Awakening, a little bit of history. It was a free-for-all public affairs show back in the day, up until a year ago. And I had a talk with management, and they said, hey, let's do this climate emergency show. We don't really have a show that's speaking to the climate emergency with the urgency that's needed. And yeah, we said, okay, let's do it. And it has been a work in progress with me learning, you know, the scientific side, the environmental justice portion of it, and just learning that the players, the movers and the shakers within the climate emergency and environmental justice movement. And it has been an absolute pleasure. I have met so many amazing people and learned so many amazing things, including Dr. Hari Lamba, but we'll get back to him. But check out the show. It's on Fridays at 8 a.m., of course, 94.1 FM. KPFA, and it also becomes a podcast, just as Miss Mimi Kennedy has stated, after the show airs at 9:01 or so. But it's scientists, it's frontline activists. This past Friday, I was able to talk to some professional women who want to do more. They started their own volunteer organization in regards to empowering people, because we're in an emergency, and you want to, you know, we can sit here and talk and talk and talk and make plans and you know, wish lists of what we want to happen. But this is about action. It's about taking action, just like Councilmember De Leon was speaking, you know, as far as with the homeless situation, it's the same thing with the climate emergency. We need to start taking action, and that's what the show is about, empowering people, letting them know how they can do whatever it is they want to do or try to do within this climate emergency, wherever they are. And yeah, but I've been doing a radio for the past 10 years at KPFA. I have a bachelor's in broadcasting from San Francisco State. And one thing I want to impart on you, since this is a political gathering, I want folks to understand that there's this plethora of people and plethora of guests that make up the movement. I mean, you got Republicans, you got libertarians, you've got the progressives, you've got the socialists, and you even got some communists. So you got hard left, you got hard right, but they're all coming together under this umbrella of this emergency, because there is no planet B. And my goal, just because it's at KPFA, doesn't mean that, you know, I only want to have hard left guests on. That's not it at all. The goal is to make sure that everybody has a voice. Anyone who is speaking to doing something about this climate emergency, they are welcome. I want to hear them out. So that's pretty much what the show is about. Recently, and this is how I came to know of you guys, Dr. Hari Lamba was a guest on my show twice, and we're working on having a Hari Lamba segment. So we're really looking forward to that. It'll be at the end of each month for about maybe 3 to 4 minutes, but yeah, it'll be a good time. So check it out. Fridays, 8 a.m., 94.1 FM. You can also stream it at kpfa.org. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Sabrina, thank you. I'm so glad I've met you, and thank you for being in the
Me
media and
too.
focusing on this. Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'm glad we heard you. If we couldn't see you, we saw you for a little bit. I'm really excited to introduce the next speaker, because I've experienced her in person before the COVID thing hit, and at other conventions. And for the first time I ever heard her, I understood the power of this person and the change that she was going to bring. R.L. Miller. She's a nationally powerful climate activist. She started Climate Hawks Vote and built to the grassroots elective and political power for the climate movement. She has experienced personally the devastation of climate change. Unfortunately, she was a Woolsey fire survivor here in California. So she knows what climate change is, because it's happening, and she knows that personally. But even before that happened, I know her dedication to this issue was as if she was carrying it with her whole person and her whole soul this whole time. She was elected to the DNC, yay, in 2020, and she serves on the National Committee, I believe, for Environmental. My printer messed up there, but she's 2013 to 21, she was the elected chair of the CADEM Environmental Caucus, and she is still constantly educating us on Twitter as @RL Miller. your bio notes, RL, say that your outside interests include keeping chickens and sleeping, but I have never known you to not be awake. So bring it on. I'm so happy that you're here, RL Miller.
Thanks so much for inviting me, PDA folk. I've been allied with Russell Green and the PDA folk almost since the day that I first met Russell. I recognized a kindred spirit. And now Alan Minsky and I collaborate on weekly calls. So I'm gonna make a few remarks partly about the party right now, because I think that most people here are members of the party in some fashion. And yes, I see the timer, and I will try to keep my remarks to under 7 minutes. But before I do any of that, I'm going to do a quick exercise here, using either physical raising of hand or turning on the reaction button. Raise your hand if you are from Paradise. And it's okay, I don't see any hands raised, because Paradise was one dot on a map.
I'm from Chico, so
Yeah.
that's right next to Paradise. So
We'll,
yes.
we'll get there. Now, raise your hand if you've been a victim of any of the wildfires that have ravaged our state over the last few years, whether it's the Mendocino Complex fire or the Sonoma fires of 2017, or the Cedar fire in San Diego, or the Woolsey fire and the Thomas fire in Ventura, or I could go on, but you get the idea. Okay, now keep your hand raised and raise your hand if you know somebody who's been directly affected by any of those wildfires. Look around this room, people. Look at the screen. Every single person got their hand up. That's what climate change is doing to us, folks. Okay, you can put your hands down now. And sorry, this one, I had the flames within 500 feet of my home. I watched my son's childhood memories burn on national television. I watched the place where I got married burn. So yeah, this one's hard for me. So at the same time, where are we now in California? We were at one point the national leader, and thanks to, in large part to Kevin De Leon and SB 100, I'm going to start off with the first fun fact of the day. Anybody know how much renewable, what percentage of power on is powering California's grid right now is renewable? 25%, 50%? Anybody want to take a guess? Put it in the chat. I'll give you a link in a moment, but right now we are running at over 70% renewable power. Right now, everybody, all 40 million of us. And if you look around, your lights are not flickering. Your internet is not flickering. We are not doomed. We are not a failed state. We are getting this done, thanks in large part to SB 100, Kevin De Leon, and leadership in the state of California. That has changed over the last couple of years. And there have been a number of different reasons for this. I wrote a piece in Cal Matters asking whether California has given up on its environmental leadership, on its climate leadership. And I expected to hear a whole chorus of, oh no, RL, that's not true. Of course, we're totally the leaders. And instead, 3 state legislators called me or texted me privately to say, yeah, you're right. It's true. And there's lots of different reasons for this. And the ones that I've identified are, number one, the building trades unions. And I love the unions generally, the nurses, SCIU, CWA, these are our friends in the unions. But the building trades have entered into an alliance with the oil companies, and they are blocking bills like SB 467 that would have banned fracking and managed the decline of California's oil industry. Governor Newsom, you know, we love him. Okay, well, we like him. But he's not, it's not what keeps him up at night. Let's just say that. Beating this recall is keeping him up at night. Tony Atkins, Anthony Rendon, yeah, they say the right things when you ask them, but geez, Atkins' last budget just had money for wildfire prevention. She didn't have any money for actually doing anything about climate change, for actually trying to make the problem less bad. And then we've got our chair, Rusty Hicks, who so far I've counted 4 different commercials from building trades unions at the convention. Yeah, the Boilermakers. Check out their video in the exhibit hall, all about how we can keep on drilling and capture the oil in something called enhanced oil recovery, or commonly known as carbon capture and storage. That's going on in the exhibit hall right now. So yeah, the California Democratic Party is taking a right turn right now. And that's why groups like PDA are so important, because we are going to keep fighting. We are going to keep the party on an even keel. I am stepping down as chair of the Environmental Caucus. I stepped down as of last night. I am still a member of the party. I am still a member of the DNC. I ran for DNC so that I could tell Tom Perez to fuck off to his face instead of telling him that online. Sadly, we haven't met in person, so I haven't been able to do that. So every time he's on my screen, I just sort of flip him off. I'm very juvenile that way. So I'm still going to be around the party, and I want to keep on working with PDA. You guys are doing great work, and I'm going to shut up because I've only got 1 minute left. I'm going to drop some links into the chat. Feel free to share around the Cal Matters piece. And please, folks, let's keep on fighting. Get this Democratic Party back on track.
Yeah. Never shut up, RL. And, you know, these things go in cycles. It just is so horrible. But what happens is when it really seems like the majority is going to win on issues that previously the majority wasn't paying attention to because the minority could manage it and pretend there was a majority, then you do get minority pushback with money and fake groups. And I'm not surprised the building industries and the oil industries are collaborating, because the building industries also have some responsibility in what's happening with land use and why we can't get people housed in California. So thank you. Okay, I have my own thing going on. Okay, our third speaker on climate is going to be Mel Figueroa. Melissa is PDA's National Climate Emergency Environmental Justice Field Coordinator. Thank you for that, Mel. And a longtime political journalist, educator, and organizer on a wide range of social and environmental justice movements. She's based in occupied Mechuta territory, otherwise known as Chico, California, that we just heard about. And she works with the Chico Traditional Ecological Stewardship Program and the Mechuta tribe, I hope I am saying that correctly, to build capacity for tribal stewardship contracting, thank God, as well as traditional ecological knowledge training and certification for workforce development. She serves on the U.S. Forest Service's Tribal Relations Implementation Team for Region 5 and is working towards her PhD in geography at UC Berkeley with field research in the Amazon rainforest and the African diaspora communities in Brazil and South Chicago. She's specializing in agroecology, food sovereignty, and the role of traditional knowledge in forest and biodiversity conservation. She's a faculty owner at the Cooperative New School for Urban Studies and Environmental Justice. Whoa, welcome, Mel.
Hi, I'm sorry for that long intro. So they said, put in what's relevant. So
yeah, it's all relevant, and I'm glad to know it.
Yeah, since I'm relatively new to this crowd, I just wanted to, talk a little bit about where I'm coming from in terms of especially the environmental justice and the climate emergency, which is a big area of focus now for PDA, and and this team that we've now assembled between myself, Alan Minsky, Russell Green, and Michael Brennan, who is our liaison on Capitol Hill, because this is a moment, right? There's a very unprecedented and opening for climate legislation to move forward, right? But it'll also, there's all kinds of ideas about how to move climate legislation forward. Not all of them are going to address the emergency, and some of them will address the emergency, but in highly unequal ways. And so what we are, we're still sort of developing our strategy, and we're also kind of engaged in these dialogues that are happening on the Hill, as well as among movements and coalitions on how to address this moment in terms of moving climate legislation forward. And if I can share my screen, yes, great. Okay, so we've got about 5 areas of focus that we are working on right now, just sort of broadly. One is water, energy, manufacturing, which again doesn't seem to be a climate issue, but where we get our stuff from, how that's done, and who is doing that work, and with what resources is a huge issue. Agriculture and tribal sovereignty, which I hope to touch on at least just a little bit, because this is a major thing that's moving, especially in California. But, and so, these are 5 areas of focus we're working on, looking at the infrastructure package, having those conversations about how to advance the most progressive and the most efficient ways of addressing the actual emergency that is on the table right now. And the long view of this is a just transition. And by just transition, a lot of people will see that catchphrase and think, oh, like coal workers and getting coal workers new jobs. But this more expansive vision that I think we're working towards clarity on has more to do with the justice, right? Economic and ecological justice. Again, as I sort of, sorry, butted because I couldn't figure out how to raise my hand on the thing. I'm from Chico, which is 7 miles from Paradise, California, where 48,000 people were displaced by that fire. And I'll talk a little bit about the difficulties that's gone on with that. But also a just transition means also empowering Black, Indigenous, and people of color communities for self-determination and capacity building. What does that mean? I've seen a lot of initiatives and issues that kind of say, oh, okay, we'll educate, poor communities about healthy food, or we'll educate, and it's one of these things, again, being in a frontline community and sort of working with frontline communities for so long, it strikes me as kind of weird that, like a lot of times Black, Indigenous, and communities of color have climate solutions. They live low carbon lives, but like, the knowledge and the capacity and the resiliency that they bring is not often recognized and isn't well enough encouraged and supported by legislation, funding, etc. And so, we're working on building towards that larger vision in our advocacy, and towards that, most of you know about the liaison program that's going on. We're building a column of climate liaisons that will meet with representatives specifically and lawmakers specifically on climate legislation. So if you're interested, just email Alan Minsky at pdamerica.org and put climate liaison in the subject line if you're interested in getting involved with that project. Now, I think I got about 3 minutes left, so I want to go real quick into sort of my work on the ground in Butte County, in Paradise, and in Chico, and sort of, what we are looking at in terms of the contexts and realities in California, as well as the solutions that are coming out of a perhaps unexpected direction, which is sovereign tribal governments and tribal communities in California. So again, as RL really powerfully described and brought clear, we are in a climate emergency. Climate change isn't in the future tense, especially for us in California. It's present. And what these wildfires have done is actually on a collision course with all of the other issues, with healthcare, with housing, especially, with all respect to Senator Kevin De Leon, 48,000 people were displaced from Paradise, and FEMA did not move heaven and earth to make sure people were housed. We one of the highest per capita homeless populations in Chico right now. About 3,000 people who are without homes were being swept by the Chico police. There's a federal lawsuit actually happening right now. And also people in Paradise are not able to rebuild because of the high standards that have been imposed on building, which is basically a disaster capitalism gentrification. So, there's a whole complex of issues that have to be, that's, more than just the science, but also about our social organization and how we handle climate refugees, climate disaster, and especially, looking towards the long haul. And so, thank you. Okay, so going to the tribal sovereignty part, I do want to mention this because you all are doing work within the state, and the project that I'm involved in, where the Mechoopda tribe and other Butte County tribes are trying to, get contracts. If you think about, let me just go to this, all of California is unceded and indigenous land. And I don't mean that to say, oh, go back to Europe or anything, but what I mean to say is that there are 109 federally recognized tribes in the state, 53 state recognized tribes. All of these are sovereign governments and government agencies over land use, land policy, and especially like environmental review, all of that stuff, right? They have authority over these lands, and this is a map of tribal territories which have legal jurisdiction in this day and age, even to this day and age, because of the law. It's just not respected by, or even known about by agencies, state and local agencies, and communities. Tribal authority is legally, morally, and ecologically necessary and enforceable. And I don't have time to go into traditional ecological knowledge, but if you go to our website, tekchico.org, you'll find out about more. All this to say is that the people who have been here for 20, 30, some almost 100,000 years in, that some of this new evidence has recorded. Indigenous people have been here. They've dealt with disasters before. They know this place more than any of us. California has only existed for 180 years. And we need to respect that fact and respect the sovereignty, because that's going to help us all. Lastly, just real quick, just look these up. SB 18, AB 52. These are laws that are on the books in California right now that tribes all over the state are leveraging to get access to land management on their ancestral territories. And that's what we need to survive this time. And that works on the state, local, and federal levels. And that's what that I personally, as well as PDA, hope the climate CEEJ formation will be fighting for. So, all right, I tried to smush all that in, but here we are.
Smushed that in perfectly, Mel. That was amazing. Thank you. And I love being reminded whose land this got chopped up and sold. If we could go back to that route and admit that error and pay respect in some form to trying to mitigate the damage that still exists. There's nothing we can do about the damage that did take place, but we can mitigate the damage that still exists by stopping treating land as something that means money and only money, which you can't eat. Okay, thank you, Mel. So we're going to move on to Medicare for All, and I'm going to bring on Sydney Kamliger. Sorry, Sydney Kamliger. I know you're there. State Senator Sydney Kamliger is powerful state senator. Again, someone that I looked up and saw everything in your bio, from District 30, encompassing areas from Culver City through the Crenshaw downtown and Florence districts. In 2019 alone, she guided 6 of her 8 bills into law. In 2020, she passed AB 1950, which is one of the most transformative probation laws in the country because it set new maximums for probation that let people exit the criminal justice system instead of staying there forever in a developing practice of extending probation for longer and longer time so people could never get out of the system. She sits on powerful committees, rules, appropriation, budget and fiscal, government organization, public safety and human services. And Sydney, I'm so proud to introduce you and just again remind you, I'm going to set it for 7 minutes. And I know originally you might have thought you had 10, but thank you and come on in.
Well, thank you for the invitation. It is so good to see everyone on this Saturday afternoon. I'm here in Los Angeles and the weather is beautiful. You know, as you mentioned in the introduction, most of the work that I've been doing has been in the criminal legal space, but I have authored a number of bills in the healthcare space, and I can tell you that these health committees on the Senate and the Assembly side are daunting, and I have no idea why. I sit sometimes and reflect on Fannie Lou Hamer, thinking to myself, I am sick and tired of being sick and tired of hearing bills being tabled until the next year. You know, I'm originally from Chicago. I spent a number of my summers volunteering with my grandmother, who was a nurse. She worked at a clinic that serviced the Robert Taylor homes. If any of you all are from Chicago, you know that the Robert Taylor homes are projects. And I would go there in the summer. She worked from 8 to 4. And I was amazed at the kind of care that I saw her and other nurses and doctors give, mostly to Black women, Black and brown Puerto Rican women, many of whom were young girls. That was the only, I think, kind of healthcare service, delivery service that they saw. Of course, it was run by the city, but they were provided care by people who look like them, who seem to have a vested interest in their healthcare. Many of these girls were on their way to becoming mothers, or they were going to be mothering for another time. And as I sat and watched, I'm telling you, at a very young age of 10, 11, 12, 13, I thought, this is what healthcare should look like. Going to spaces where you're welcomed, where people care, where they give you tough love, but where they are not pinching pennies and looking at the bottom line before deciding what kind of care to give to you. Here we are in 2021 with 3 million folks who are uninsured in the state of California and many more who have inadequate health insurance and healthcare coverage. And despite higher spending, we know that our healthcare outcomes are getting worse and worse. And in the middle of that, what do we have? We have a greater monopolization of healthcare. We have insurance companies and healthcare systems who are recording and reporting record profits. We have hedge funds that are actually deciding the kind of care that we get. We know that 1 out of 3 Americans are in medical debt, and hospitals, we know, are the most pernicious when it comes to chasing people down, asking them for the last little penny that they have. And we know that the majority of the bankruptcies that we see are because people cannot afford their health care coverage. And I think, excuse my French, that is fucked up. And that is what AB 1400 was all about. And that is why we are going to continue to keep fighting to make sure that we get a hearing and that it is heard. I have 3 bills, AB 369, SB 642, and AB 458. And two of those 3 bills actually were on the verge of being tabled. We jailbroke one of them, and so that one is moving forward. 369 is a street medicine bill that will allow us to create an infrastructure so that healthcare providers can meet homeless folks where they are. We know that 70% of our homeless folks are actually eligible for healthcare under Medi-Cal, but they're not making an appointment, getting on the bus and going to the brick and mortar facility. They don't have the ID all the time that's required to fill out the forms. You know what that's like when you go to the clinic and they ask you for that information again on that form and you think, fuck, I did this like last time. Are you kidding me? And so we're asking our folks who are unhoused to go through that. No, AB 369 would say we're going to meet our folks where they are. We're going to come out into the streets. If it's at the shelter, if it's the permanent supportive housing, if it's at the encampment, we are going to meet them in the streets so that they either get access to their meds, they can get help with housing placement, or they can have their trauma wounds treated like anyone else where they are. We know that we have life expectancy rates for our unhoused individuals that are much less than folks who are housed. And we have got to, while we're addressing the issue of homelessness, have got to make sure that we're prioritizing their health care. AB 458 would have allowed California to import drugs from Canada, because we know that big pharma has a stranglehold on us like nobody's business. And if we can jailbreak from that unhealthy relationship and get access to pharmaceuticals from other countries that seem to have a better understanding of cost, then let's do it. Now, I have to tell you that that bill is on hold. And so while we are fighting to figure out if there's any chance that we can get it heard this year, and because we are having deadlines that are passing that will allow bills to be heard in the House of Origin, it looks like that's headed for 2022. I was not surprised, but I was certainly dismayed. 2 minutes left. But it goes to show you once again the stranglehold that big pharma has. And then lastly, 642, that would say that medical staff should be taking care of patients and making decisions around patient care rather than hospital executives. And I have to tell you, we have been swerving like nobody's business to make sure that we are able to get the votes on that bill so that it can be heard through our Senate committees, and hopefully it will get off the Senate floor and over to the Assembly. I'm saying all this to say, we would not be able to get as far as we have gotten without PDA, but we need you to work with us, to work with progressive members in the legislature, to push and to remind people that it is about patients over profits. It is not about having accountants decide the quality and the access to healthcare that all of us deserve. And lastly, yes, these are intersectional issues. You should not be only talking about healthcare without talking about environmental justice and righteous education and affordable housing and reforming the criminal legal system. And lastly, employment and environmental justice, because there is a nexus between all of those issues and the kind of California that many people talk about, but many people also don't seem to have the courage to work for. These bills are not complicated. The issues may be complicated, but it doesn't mean you don't have courage, and it doesn't mean you don't speak the truth, and it doesn't mean that you push to get them passed and signed into law. Enough with the empty words, people. Enough with the empty words.
All right, Mel, yeah, Tim Carpenter once said you meet the best people in PDA, and that kind of invisible pushback that you don't know where it's coming from is the worst kind. We've experienced it. Dr. Bill could speak to this, and everybody who's been working in healthcare, but thank you, because what it takes is leadership like yours. So we contact your office to find out if our people are on board with you, correct?
Yes, yes.
Because often they won't say on their website where their stand is on particular bills. So thank you anyway for that, because that's the first thing we can all do, find out where our representatives stand. Okay, so our final speaker is somebody who I'm also very excited, and correct me if I'm wrong, anybody, but Dr. Beatrice Betty Valencia. She is, after I have read about her, what I would say is the best kind of political leader. She's a firebrand from what she calls the not so sweet city of Orange. So she's mouthy, thank you, in Orange County. She is a recent PhD in education from Chapman University. She is, as her bio said, she's tireless. She'll be at any gathering in her community that addresses peace and social justice. And she is often called upon to speak there because her words have been and are very effective. And that's why she's been invited to speak to us here. So Betty, we are happy to give you the last word. Come on.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Wow, I don't know how I'm going to speak after Senator Sidney, but I was so inspired by her and everyone who spoke. I've been giving this last spot, and I'm just going to say it's such a privilege to speak to all of you. And I'm going to share with you right now a vision that I've been reminiscing in my head now for some time. And it actually fits so nicely in this space. Now, when we talk about Medicare for all, when we talk about this idea of health care justice, I want to share with you this vision that encompasses 3 guiding principles, which we have heard echoed in all of these narratives today. And this comprehensive justice is at its core. Now, listen here. It must be founded on 3 principles, like I said. And first and foremost, we must commit to racial justice. Can I get an amen? Can I get a hands up? Can I get a thumbs up? We must commit to both understanding, one, and then naming, as Senator Sidney said, naming it, because we continue to see inequalities. We continue to see this ongoing resistance, listen here, this ongoing resistance to racial equality. Can you imagine that sentence? We have an ongoing resistance to something that we foundationally need to have to transform every ounce of our society. Am I right? Now, we can get this, and it's all under the umbrella of this racial equality. Now, we've heard speakers, for example, our first speaker, Chase, and I took some notes because I was so inspired, mention mass incarceration of Black and brown bodies, intergenerational incarceration. Don't leave this meeting without remembering that word, intergenerational incarceration. That's not what this country should be pushing, but it is in fact #1 globally in mass incarceration. You know that, and I'm preaching to the choir, but why is this important? It's important because under the vision of healthcare for all, we must at its core address this. We must at its core know that America is #1 in obesity. America's #1 in divorce, in watching TV, in police officers. America is #1 and makes hefty profits, as you mentioned, Mimi, on our medications. We are #1 in things that we should not be proud of, when we are #1 in overspending in military, while the residents and inhabitants of this country are dying disproportionately because of lack of Medicare for all. Am I right? Now, this vision that we have to have at its core, as I mentioned, must address racial inequality. But second, it must be a comprehensive justice, just like Senator Sidney said, not mainstream intersectionality. Now listen to me for a moment, not mainstream intersectionality, but deep, deep understanding of the spaces we each occupied. I am a Mexican queer immigrant woman. I occupied a very different space. But it isn't to compete with a space, it is to understand that we each have these spaces. It is our ideas that collaborate into this vision. It is that comprehensive justice that we are all talking about in this space, am I right? And by the way, that is the most solid investment we can make in this country. That is a solid investment when we talk about racial justice and a comprehensive justice that encompasses climate justice, that encompasses real justice that touches every aspect of our bodies. And the last thing, and I want to talk about, is coalitional work. What does that look like? Yes, it's intersectional, but it is further than that. It's what I call the second step. It is actually making sure that in every space that 119 people are going to occupy today, that we talk about these 3 things. 1, racial equality, which is at the core of so many root problems. 2, that we are really addressing the comprehensive justice and what that looks like. And 3, that we are reaching out to others to also share in their work. We cannot work in a silo. We cannot just be for this or that. We must also connect to those things like immigration justice. We must connect to those things because foundationally, they all impact our vision of healthcare for all. So it's so tough to follow someone so enamored and motivational, but I want to say this to everybody here. I am preaching to the choir, yes, but don't forget, we all need to be reminded of our true vision. And that vision means that everyone is taken care of. The whole body, not just my heart, not just my hands, but my teeth, my eyes, right? We have separated our bodies as if one can function without the other. Well, friends, we can no longer function this way. We haven't been functioning this way. So if America is going to be first, we need to catch up. At this point, we need to catch up to the healthcare justice that we are seeking. I know you get it. You get it. I get it. Now we have to go out and make sure that people get it too. We have to support candidates, policies. You keep on doing the work that you do. When you feel nobody's listening, you keep speaking. And I too am tired of being tired, but I'm not done. And you're not done. We may be tired, but we are not done. And this work is going to continue long after we are probably gone from this earth. And let's hope, R.L. Miller, that this earth can withstand the amount of abuse that we are dishing it out. So overall, looking at healthcare justice must incorporate racial justice, climate justice, true justice that really looks at the whole person, And we are all speaking truth to power in this way in every respective spot. Thank you for inviting me today. Thank you for speaking the truth to power. Thank you for being out there doing the work. And let's keep doing this work because you get it.
Okay, you are amazing. I am so glad to meet you and thank you for speaking today. Everybody, I want to just say one thing that I learned, I'm hearing a lot about, we all are. India, the COVID crisis in India. It was said on National Public Radio this morning that there's not one family that has not been impacted, and their reporter was weeping during her report. I just looked up India's healthcare system. I'm not sure how many, probably many of you know what I just discovered, but there's a problem there. Why? Because rural versus urban, there's not enough healthcare in the rural places. What else? They have a public healthcare system. Oh, really? Yes, except for it's completely unequal because it's a public-private partnership. Now we know why. There's very little rural healthcare and probably better in the cities just for the rich people. There's a caste system in India. I know that's over, but it's as deeply rooted as racism is in our country. So those are three things. We're going to get pushback, I'm sure, saying, well, India has a public healthcare system, universal healthcare, and they look at how it happened. So forget about it for arguing no. Remember, they had a public-private partnership, they had a caste system, and they had rural and urban inequities based on economics. And that's what's wrong. And that's what America could get right with Medicare for all, because we're already doing it with Medicare. Okay, just wanted to say that. I think Alan Minsky has joined us. We've come to the end of the speakers. I'm not going to say anything more, though. I'd love to talk. And I just want to say thank you for being activists, because everybody here is doing the actual work that has made this change. We need the leaders. PDA grows the leaders. That's one of our best qualities, is how we have grown leadership and people who can speak, which is amazing. It wasn't always true, which is why they asked me, an actress, to help out originally. But now there's a gazillion people who can do what I used to be particularly good at. Okay, Alan, are you with us? Because I think you wanted to wrap things up.
Oh, well, no, I just want to say I've received my shot, my Moderna shot from Dodger Stadium. And I've been listening in throughout. I got cut off a couple times. Unfortunately, I missed the latter half of Senator De Leon. And the last spectacular speaker I had just dropped, and then I rejoined, which I think you saw in me rejoining. But other than that, I heard everything, and just fantastic set of speakers from Chesa all the way through to our final speaker, who I thought was incredibly powerful. Again, missed a little bit of that one, missed a little bit of Kevin De Leon as it got cut out. I think going through the Dodger Stadium parking lot, the connection was not so great in certain spots. But I really want to thank everybody who was involved in pulling this together. Of course, Mike Thaler and Mimi Kennedy. I got a few people. I did check my email because I had to go back to my email to get my registration link a moment ago, and I saw a few people sent me emails to sign up to be PDA climate liaisons. So again, my email, and by the way, I spell my first name ALAN at pdamerica.org, ALAN at pdamerica.org if you're interested in being a climate liaison for PDA, and that's a national project, of course, all throughout California as well. It's going to be a a parallel operation with our general liaison program. And I think RL knows why we need that, because there's so much that needs to be done on the federal legislative level and on the state legislative level. Thank you, of course, for Melissa for her fantastic presentation. It's an incredible honor to work alongside her on the PDA National Climate Team. And it's an honor to work alongside with PDA-CA. And the state senator who just spoke to, absolutely, PDA will be with you all the way on the fight for single universal payer health care in the state of California. Will be that way nationally for any state that takes initiative on that front. And of course,
Alan,
Medicare for all
Alan,
nationally. Dr. Bill, yes.
Yeah, so sorry to kind of dovetail on what you're saying, but I know it's top of the hour and folks are going to need to go back to the general session for the afternoon session. But I did want to invite everyone to part of the reason the wrap-up session would be difficult is tomorrow we've got our healthcare emergency town hall, which we've conducted every week, Sundays, 1 p.m. Pacific time. We have a stellar guest speaker tomorrow, Dr. Abdul El Sayed and Dr. Micah Johnson, who of course authored what's now a classic volume. I see Nurse Judy is holding it up, but your green screen is kind of making it disappear. It's called Medicare for All, A Citizen's Guide. And so the authors and of course outstanding Bernie spokesperson for Medicare for All, Dr. Abdul El Sayed, will join us tomorrow. That's 1 o'clock Pacific time for our healthcare emergency town hall. Y'all are welcome to join us. And the information, of course, if you don't have it in your email, then please go right now to pdamerica.org, click join and click healthcare, and that gets you on the healthcare issue team. In fact, click all the issue teams so you're up to date on all of the various announcements for all the issue teams, including climate. And I want to thank Alan for fielding all of those requests for liaison and all of the liaison teams of PDA National. I want to thank Mimi Kennedy again for MC today. Thank you so much, Mimi, and to Mike Fowler for hosting in this Zoom meeting space, and all of the co-hosts and the speakers were just fantastic. Thank you to my good friend, Dr. Betty Valencia, to wrap up as you did. Always leave us on a virtual, emotional, and spiritual high. So thank you so much to all of you and everybody for joining us as always. What a terrific event this was. So this was, yeah.
Dr. Bill, one final thing, because I did want to chime in, and not only do we need to, of course, support Pamela Price and Chesa Boudin, but I want to give people the heads up. On May 18th, I believe I'm getting the date right, in Philadelphia, one of the great progressive district attorneys, Larry Krasner, is being challenged, and the Democratic Party has abandoned their support for him there because he is a great progressive prosecutor and a great progressive DA. These off-year elections in May of a year after a presidential election, the turnout is so low. So any advocacy that people can do to support Larry Krasner, along with Pamela and Chesa, so important, so important. So full solidarity with them, and I did not want to have missed the opportunity to again amplify two of our speakers from the top of our program today. Thank you, Dr. Bill. Sorry for interrupting.
Oh no, thank you so much. And Mike Feller, is there anything more before we wrap up?
Not really. I just wanted to say bye, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. You people who joined and listened in and watched are what really made the meeting. And I hope to see some of you tonight at the Progressive Caucus meeting at 7:30. So on that note, I think I will shut down the meeting. So thanks again, everybody. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.